This is a 1940s brick structure located somewhere in Indiana. It does face the south, and the south does get significant rainfall from wind-driven rains, and it does get more weathering. What you see here is a brick kick-out dormer, and water will be absorbed in that brick, especially during long periods of rain. Water is very absorbent in mortar joints. Once it saturates the brick, the water is going to run down. And when you look at this, if there's no weep holes on the sides or ropes coming out, then you know it was improperly installed. That means there's no nested gutter underneath the brick. So when the brick gets wet, it drains down, hits the lintel, and leaks inside. And what will happen on the inside is you'll actually see like repaired ceilings or different textured ceilings. They may even disclose that they repaired it and the roofer flashed it, but they have no idea why it leaks. It leaks after the brick becomes saturated. I call that a brick column, which is above this area, and there's different ways they put these in. And so this will probably leak forever. So basically, if you're going to buy a house like this, just plan on fixing that ceiling every couple of years, and don't put your piano underneath it. Now we're looking at the front yard, and if you notice, there is some new concrete. There's different histories of concrete. Well, that's going to happen, especially in a 7-year-old home. But you also look at trees out front, and if you see trees in the front lawn, you want to also make sure that there's no tree root issue. So homeowners really should disclose if they ever had a snake to drains, if they ever had to do repairs. Now that's a kind of small tree. Chances are, it's not an issue. But what about the tree that was there before? And if you notice that, if you see the sidewalk places, members have been replaced, the tree could have been over a bit and it could have lifted it up, and that's why they replaced those concrete members, cut that tree down and plant a new tree. Well, if that old tree was a problem, then guess what? The drains and sewers underground could be broken from the tree roots from the old tree that was there. And maybe they snaked it, it's okay for now, but maybe it'll start to fill in with soil. And so if you know there was a big tree that was cut down, and you know that they've done snaking, and you might at this point consider getting a camera inspection, because that could be a $2,000 to $4,000 repair. Now, looking at this photo here, we're going to move around the house, and you notice it does have a chimney cap and screen. You always want to have a chimney cap and screen, especially if there's a fireplace. Also, it does help with minimizing eddy currents and things like that. Plus, animals and birds aren't going to fly down in there. Looking also at this roof, you're going to see these little things sticking out of these metal plates that are sticking out of the slate roof, and these are designed to hold the ice. Well, first of all, why do we have ice on the roof? Well, we have ice dams. Why do we have ice dams? Well, ice dams are caused by heat loss to the unconditioned attic space caused by thermal bypass, thermal bridging, and an unbalanced heating system. So right now, we know that we have ice dams. We know that they can be prevented because ice dams are not natural occurrences. They are caused by heat loss to the unconditioned attic space. If you'd like, I have a video on YouTube on Ice Dams the Truth. You should watch it, and it does talk all about that. These are slates, and they appear to be from Pennsylvania type slates. Those are generally not as strong and as durable, and don't have as much impact resistance as some of the slates that come from the far east, like Vermont. And the Vermont slates generally are like more colorful. Generally, they're green, different types of green from Pennsylvania. And if you notice here, the slates are becoming loose. And what happens is when you have a 7-year-old roof, the nails become rusted, the nail heads break off, and the slates get loose, they break. And this is also a valley and is broken. It could have been from ice that caused this to break. So when you have a slate roof that has some broken members, chipped members, now just because they're chipped and broken doesn't necessarily mean that the slate roof is going to leak. Many times if they do leak, they don't leak right underneath where the slate's missing or broken. This type of roof will require a tune-up, and a slate tune-ups can cost anywhere from $500 to $2,000. When you have a roof this old, it does need a tune-up, and the slate roofer will come up with special ladders. Don't you ever walk on these, because if you walk on them, you're going to break them or you're going to get hurt. So the slate ladder is important. That way they don't damage them. And they will also want to fix maybe maintenance slates. They may want to repair them with metal, or they might want to repair them with new slates. They may repair them with caulking or cement. They'll let you know, and they'll tell you the prices. But This type of roof should have a roof tune-up every 5 years, and you could easily spend $500 to $2,000 every let's say up to 10 years to maintain this roof. In this photo, what you see is exposed soil, and this appears to be caused by the gutter overflowing. So the downspouts could be plugged up and they may need snaking. The gutters could be dirty, they're overflowing. The gutters could be undersized and too small for the amount of roof that drains into the gutters and downspouts. So you need to look at all that. Not to mention the water puddles at this location, so down in the basement you're going to want to use a moisture meter to see if it leaks. Now, you'll also notice that this house has the original drain tile system, which is clay. After 60 years, clay drain tile systems can become slow and sluggish. And so you got to assume that it's possible that it is slow and sluggish, and it becomes slow and sluggish from silting, from settlement. If the tree bushes had roots that got into it, it can cause that. Gutters overflowing. And in the basement, you have a foundation that could also have cracks. So now you've got a gutter overflowing, you've got ponding water, you got poor grading. In other words, the ground is sloped towards the house, so the water puddles there. And then if you have cracks in the basement, they're going to leak in. So these are a lot of different conditions that need to be corrected. What you're looking at here is a window well, and this one's okay. They actually have the screen on top of the grate. This is safe, so children can't fall in. A lot of homes don't even have these, or they have glass ones or plastic ones. And in the winter, if you live in a cold climate zone, it can be a problem. If you don't see it, you can step in there and break your leg. What you want to do also in these is to actually look at them and open them up and look inside to look at the foundation walls. And if the foundation walls are cracked or bowed or there's loose mortar joints, they've got to be repaired. And someone's got to climb in there and make these repairs. And so you want to look at every one of these and look inside, and you want to keep them clean. A lot of times people also replace these old basement windows. Half the time they don't open, they're painted shut or they're cracked. People like to replace them with glass blocks, and they'll put vents in them. This is a window air conditioner, but actually there's a hole in the brick siding. The problem with this type of design is that if you have to replace it, and this one's over 20 years old, you got to find something that'll fit in that hole. B, you notice how they put in with wood, so you know this thing leaks. Not only that, people leave these in the wintertime, and so now you got thermal bypass and thermal bridging, and it costs you a lot of money. And so if you're going to leave these in, you better design some kind of covers to put on the outside and on the inside. As far as the hole already done, you're going to have to stick with that and look for an air conditioner that'll fit. This also shows me that this air conditioner is old and on borrowed time. What you have here are lintels that, when they rust, they expand, and when they expand, they lift the brick up. So when you look at brick buildings, you want to look at the lintels. A lot of times, in this particular case, you can't see the lintel because it's covered with siding. But the lintel's getting bigger, and now you've got a small hairline crack. So as the water runs down the brick, it's going to get sucked into that crack, and it's going to cause the lintel to rust more. And before you know it, you're going to have a big crack, and then you have to replace the lintel. Lintel replacements can be very expensive. So all lintel conditions that cause cracks in brick because they expand and they lift the brick up, they all need to be grouted out, and they need to be tuck pointed. The problem also is matching the tuck point, because here you can see it's like gray and sometimes it's brown. So you want to play around with the mortar tuck pointing material ahead of time before you ruin your house. Maybe you have to make it dirty. Maybe you have to dye it. Maybe you got to test it somewhere just to see how it looks. And you need to wait for it to dry too, because usually concrete will hydrate in the first probably 28 days. So you want to see how it looks before you do this repair. Or, of course, you could just hire a masonry contractor. When I look at these stairs, I always want to look and measure the steps. You know, they should be 7 3/4 inch. In some states like Ohio, you're allowed 8 1/4. But what's important is that the steps are the same size. And a lot of times one's wider or longer or shorter, or the depths are different. And so this can create an unfamiliar stepping condition. And so you always want to measure these. They shouldn't really be too far apart. And then I also like to tell people maybe they need handrails. Maybe you have elders that may be visiting or children, and even though it's only 2 steps, I do recommend handrails. If a kid were to fall off that's the landing up there, they can get hurt. Getting a little bit closer to the door, you'll notice a gap where water can run down the door and run into that gap, and then that can cause leaks indoors. It can cause rotting carpenter ants, and so this probably should be caulked and repaired. Also, there's peeling paint. Now, this is a pre-1978 structure, therefore the paint may or may not contain lead, and all work that is done to homes that are pre-1978 should be done by lead certified licensed contractors or people that are at least familiar with lead paint repairs painting protocols. The front entrance does have an overhang canopy type, and it's always a good idea to ask the homeowners how they maintain this canopy. Do they take it down for the winter? Do they treat it with some type of spray? Also, you want to look at the canopy, the way it's fastened, it's connected to the house. As we walk around the house, we also now notice that the driveway is newer, but the contractor could have done a better slope of the concrete, so it slopes away from the house. In this area here, it actually kind of slopes towards the house. So if the gutters overflow and the driveway gets wet, the water's going to run towards the house. And if you've got a crack in your foundation, it could leak. And so fixing this could be expensive, either by removing it, or you could just drill holes into this and pressure mud jack it up. And there are many contractors that perform this type of work. Now, when you see electrical outlets installed on the exterior under gutters, soffit areas, it's kind of an indication that they use electrical melting ice cords. We talked about ice dams earlier, and so when you see this, it is an indication that the house gets ice dams. So we do need to look at the interior to see if we could correct this problem. Sometimes these are also used for holiday light decorations, but generally it's for ice dam protection. Looking up at another window, not only do we have lintels that are rusting and causing cracks, these cracks are a little bit larger and the mortar joints are actually starting to fall out. But if you look at the light fixture, you'll notice that it doesn't have protective globe for the light and it has a missing bulb. And the Romex wire is loose, dangling, and not properly installed. So this may be an electrical condition that would require an electrician to repair. From this improper electrical installation, we also see a very old electrical meter. And this is what I call a round meter. Generally, these older meters are only 60 amps. And so you want to look at an electrical panel, and many times it is a 60 amp panel. Now it may be 100 amp. At that point, you want to look at the wires that are leaving the meter that go into the panel. And so it's a good exterior observation to make sure when you get inside, you open up the electrical panel and look. You also want to look at the main wire as it comes to the house. You want to make sure that it's at least 12 feet off the concrete or 10 feet off the backyard. You want to make sure that it's not sagging. And most of all, you want to look at the trees around there. Many times the tree branches will grow, and if the wind blows, it knocks it down, and then you don't have power, and you have to wait a couple days to get it fixed. So trim all the trees that interfere with the main service electrical. As you walk around the house, now skip that. Earlier, you saw the downspout base crocks being clay tile, indicating that they're original, and I did state that these can become slow and sluggish over time. Here you actually see a PVC newer downspout crock, and this is an indication of past waterproofing, water management, and it's also possible that they have a interior waterproofing system, and so this may have been the sub pump that was added. A lot of times when you have brick like this home that doesn't have weep holes, and it does get a lot of water from rain, sometimes you get moisture intrusion in the basement. And so you will see people install interior waterproofing systems or other type of water management controls. Looking at this photo, you can see the new concrete steps. Well, they probably had to put those in because when they poured the new concrete, they excavated or did whatever management repair they did, they had to replace the steps. Sometimes when they buy these prefab steps, the steps as they enter the house are the wrong size or aren't even on the landing. And so you want to measure that because that again could be a unfamiliar stepping condition for somebody leaving. Looking a little closer, you'll notice the water spigot. Usually when you see these older spigots, you want to recommend maybe replacing them with frost-free fixtures. This way you don't have to worry about shutting the water off in the basement and looking for the shutoffs. And a lot of times those shutoffs are old and corroded, and they start dripping and leaking. So replacing exterior water spigot with frost-free fixtures in cold weather climate zones is advised. Now, when you see the electrical outlets under the soffits in the backyard, you pretty much know that it's not for holiday lights, and they probably do have an ice dam issue. So now you have to pay particular attention to the interior conditions that cause ice dams. If you look way up top, you'll notice a dormer that has no soffits, but this is also a low-pitched roof. So you know that this roof probably is a rolled roof membrane, and rolled roof membranes require high maintenance, and they only last 5 to 8 years. So you're probably not going to climb up there, so you may want to ask the owners to provide a receipt for when this rolled roof membrane was replaced. And if they don't know, and it's been 10 years, you could bet that you're going to need a new flat roof. Here you notice a fire pit, and the fire pit might be a little bit too close to the house. First of all, it could be a fire hazard if you make a large fire, but more importantly, it'll probably cause staining, possibly to the siding. And so if you're going to put fire pits in homes, I do recommend putting them farther away from your home. Here, the trench drain is plugged up and dirty, and you have to periodically clean these. These are generally located in front of garages, and if they get full of leaves, then you might get water end up going into your garage, and if there's any boxes stored in the garage, they're going to be damaged. Here we're looking at the air conditioner on the outside, and this is probably about 7 years old. Generally these last around 10 to 15 years. But what's more important, look how the top is all damaged and dented, probably from ice dams coming down or even tree branches. Also, if you look at the puddling water and dripping, the gutters overflowing. You've got ponding water, and also the homeowner may have a problem in the basement here. The electrical box for the air conditioner is rusting, the window is rusting, and so this is a problem that needs to be corrected. Here you can see a few things. One, the gutters are overflowing, and they're causing mildew on the siding, which can be cleaned. The tree is too close, which is probably causing the gutters to plug up, and that's why the gutters are overflowing. And then the ground's getting wet and freezing and pushing that retaining wall structure that they have for aesthetics. Probably need to remove those walls because kids would like to walk on those. They can break their legs and trip. Also, if you notice, the backyard is very shaded and it has poor soil, so you have mud every time it rains. So you may want to maybe even cut the tree down and get some topsoil and perform some type of foliage cover for this area. Also, you'll see, again, we have a light that's missing a bulb, but also the outlet is probably a 2 or 3 prong. We do recommend all exterior outlets that are on the outside garage, in the basement, or anywhere within 5 feet of a water source to be changed over to GFCIs. And so maybe getting an electrical update might not be a bad idea. The electrical wires going to the garage are overhead and not buried, and here you can see the inspector touching them, which probably isn't a good idea. But these wires should actually be 12 feet above the ground, cement or any type of pavement, and then also 10 feet if it's above a grass area. In this case, you may consider hiring an electrician to see what it costs to trench an underground wire to the garage. Now in the garage, we are looking at the sheathing, and what you do notice, if you look closely, there's some mildew and mold, and a lot of times it's an indication of past roof leaks, but this roof wasn't leaking. However, when you close garage doors, the humidity stays inside, and it's inevitable that you could get some mildew and mold growing on the wood timbers. A lot of this can just be washed off. The garage door is a newer opener, and what you want to do is make sure at least that you get both remote controls. Another thing to look at is make sure it has its own outlet. A lot of times people in older garages have these long extension cords, and you do not want extension cords. Also, if you look at the attic joists, they're not designed for storage. So we're talking light storage or no storage. These are designed to keep the roof level and in line. Now looking up at the second floor room, obviously we have some low head clearance areas, but what's important to notice here is you may not be able to get into the attic space, and the built-in shelving may require insulation or additional insulation. So if there is no access, you may have to provide one. Also, when you look straight up to the ceiling, you'll notice the oversized hole in the fan. And basically this is going up to the attic, and this is a thermal bypass, thermal bridging condition, and a lot of these homes don't have cold air returns in the second levels or in the finished attics. So now you've got positive pressure blowing air up into the attic, and you're going to have ice dams, heat loss, and all kind of problems. You'll notice in the closet the light bulb doesn't have a protective globe. A lot of times these lights can be in the way where you could hit them and break them with the hangers and your head, and so protective globes in closet lights are important. Looking at the built-in shelves again, you'll notice also that they have fancy knobs, and some of the knobs are missing and broken. So maybe you might have to replace all the knobs, because a lot of times it's hard to find matching knobs, especially in kitchens, built-in cabinets, and furniture. Looking at the second floor closet, you'll notice a supply duct does not have a register cover. You probably should have a cover on there, only so things don't get in there. Maybe you have a loose gerbil or a pet gets in there. Mice can travel in and out through the house this way, and it should be protected. Also, if you notice, what they did is they made a homemade door vent, so it was actually put in the closet. And now you're heating the closet, and that may restrict a little bit of the flow. The two-prong outlet is older, and this is letting you know that this is an older home with probably a two-wire system, knob and tube wired home. You may want to call your insurance company to make sure that they cover the house. A lot of insurance companies lately are not covering homes that have knob and tube, so it's pretty important to know ahead of time if you're going to have insurance from your carrier on a house with older knob and tube. This is the air conditioner that we were looking at outside that we said was very old, and looking at it from the inside, it does look very old. So if this thing doesn't work, it's probably not worth fixing, and you're going to have to look for another type of air conditioner that will fit in this hole, since this penetration actually goes through the brick. Other closet lights have improper wiring here. The globe's rather large, and you can see how they're pinching the knob and tube wiring, and so you need an electrician to make repairs to this location as well. Many times people will install three-prong outlets on two-wire systems, which then show an open ground. These should be replaced. Other times people, as you see in this photo, install GFIs in two-wire systems, and it also shows an open ground. So we do recommend properly wiring GFIs that properly trip, that are properly wired to three-wire systems. Here you'll notice that the floor is wet at the grout joints underneath the toilet, and the toilet flange and wax seal is leaking. This will cause deterioration and rotting to the subfloor. This toilet needs to be removed, a new wax seal needs to be installed, and it needs to be properly fastened. The second floor shower also has leakage around the door frame, and when you test the shower, always run the water up against the door frames with the door closed. Sometimes you need to get inside to do this and see if it leaks. If it does leak, you can bet that you're going to get deterioration, you're going to get loose tiles, you're going to have structural damage if it goes on for a long period of time. And so grouting, caulking showers and tub tiles and surrounds is very important, and proper maintenance needs to be continued. Earlier we talked about the kick-out dormer that probably leaks, and here on the inside you could actually see that the ceiling has been repaired and there is stains. They might be a little hard to see because they painted over the stains, but this does leak and will leak probably forever. This home does have a fireplace, and if you look at the metal damper, it's closed. You should check the damper to see if it opens and closes, but it's very difficult to actually inspect in the smoke and fire chamber or smoke shelf area. These types of fireplaces should all be inspected, tested, and certified by chimney professionals or chimney sweep contractors prior to lighting a fire. You also need to check inside to make sure that there's no bird's nest or bats or anything like that. This particular chimney did have a screen and cap, but you don't know when that was put up. So it needs to be inspected by a professional. Whenever you have wood floors and there's rugs on them, lift up all the rugs and look underneath, because there is a possible chance of the rug material reacting with the floor, causing discoloration. A lot of people want to blame this on the sun, and yes, the sun does do this, but a lot of these rugs have phthalates in them, and they have different types of chemicals that react with the wood. And you can see in this picture where the wood floor has been damaged, and sometimes it's worse than this, and you have to then consider refinishing the entire floor and restaining it. When you look at this window, you want to think of a few things. One, if you notice the window trim does have some mildew and staining, and this generally occurs in the wintertime when there's condensation. So you want to make sure that the house does not have moisture generators that cause this kind of problem throughout the house. Also, you want to probably think about where you're going to get a handle for this. Now, some of these older windows still have handles that can be purchased, but you may want to check that out with the window company. When you're looking at outlets and switch plates, take a quick look for odd things such as red lights. This switch here has a red light when you flick it on, and you're trying to figure out what it's for. Well, it's for an outlet that's outside that's connected to ice melt cords. So this is how they control ice dams. They turn that on and melt the ice all winter. So ice dams can be solved other ways without spending electricity. Looking at this front door also, you'll notice that you have a regular lock, you have a deadbolt, and you got some other fancy old lock that's probably outdated and there's no parts for it. Well, this is a metal door and it's got 3 holes in it. So not sure how you would fix this, but you may ultimately have to replace the front door. Sometimes wood floor, tile floor installers will elevate floors for whatever reason. Unfortunately, these do become toe stubbers. Also can become unfamiliar stepping conditions where you could trip forward, you could trip backward, and so just bad idea to have homes with different elevations of floors. This particular home had a cat. Generally, when you have houses with cats, you probably need to clean all the ductwork because the ductwork probably has dander in it. A cat here, and a lot of people are allergic to cats. They also had a hole put in the door for the cat to go down to the litter box, and the door is now damaged. But from a building science perspective, holes in doors that lead to the basement are probably good because that helps equalize pressure. Just in case you have negative pressure in the basement, this can actually help. So I probably would just put a grate cover over this and just leave the hole there. As you go through the house, always pay attention to exterior ceilings, and you're looking for repairs and stains. In this particular house, there were repairs and stains, and usually these stains are caused by the gutters leaking when the ice starts to melt from the ice dams. These older homes, also built in the 40s and 50s, did not have large overhangs just because that's the way the architects designed the homes during that era. And so if you do get an ice dam, it's not like there's a whole lot of room there for water to leak into the soffit. So a lot of these homes will have leaks inside, and when you run a clue report, you may find out that they've had past water claims. Here you'll notice that the sink fixture stopper needs to be adjusted, and a lot of times these are easy repairs from below. You also notice that the tile is older. Generally, this size tile is also known as Florida tile, and you really can't buy these pieces because they're thicker and they're different size than normal tiles. So you're kind of stuck with that. If you need pieces, sometimes you could get them from underneath sinks and take them off the wall and replace them. Maybe you're lucky and you might find a box in the attic or in the garage, or maybe you could try to Google it. You'll have to do grouting, as you notice here, where there's some holes that were drilled in. You can grout that. And grouting and caulking is generally considered normal maintenance in most bathrooms. After running the water in the sink, always look underneath, and here you can actually see where water is dripping down, and so you might need to make a small adjustment on the fixture, or sometimes the traps are corroded and the traps need to be tightened. Now we're down in the kitchen and we're looking at the appliances, and we do notice that the homeowner had left us some cookies and water and had a note there that says, "Please help yourself." Well, thank you very much. I think all homeowners should leave cookies for the home inspector. You always want to run the dishwasher just to see if the dishwasher leaks into the basement, because we haven't been down in the basement yet. And this is a newer dishwasher. Generally, we also tell our clients that due to a lot of older appliances that are in this home and other homes, we do recommend getting an appliance warranty. You want to always test all the burners on the oven and the stove to make sure that all the elements work. Sometimes the house does stink up if the stoves are dirty, but that's all part of the inspection. After testing the water and water temperature to make sure it's not above 120 degrees, because over 120 degrees you could burn. You also want to look underneath and make sure the garbage disposal isn't running or any drains aren't leaking. And here you'll actually see the garbage disposal has an improper electrical splice. So really this should be redone properly. If you also notice where the switch is for the garbage disposal, it happens to be right underneath the sink. This is probably not a good location because let's say you are trying to pull something out of the garbage disposal and you lean over and let's say a belt buckle clips this and turns on the garbage disposal. So this is a very bad location for garbage disposal. A child can hit this button while you're trying to get something out of it. So we recommend moving the switch to the countertop. Sometimes you take these for granted, but you want to also make sure and try to eyeball this to make sure that these are fastened to studs or fastened to joists, because if these are just fastened to the drywall, this thing could come down. Sometimes homeowners also leave fruit out. However, don't take a bite of these, because if you do, you'll lose your teeth. These aren't real. Many times in these 1940s and 50s homes, the sub panels are old fuse boxes, and the fuses are in hallways or on the first level. You need to open these up and look. Most of the time, it'll be hard to take these out because they're painted and caulked to the wall. But at least look inside, and you'll notice here the green fuses mean 30 amps, and these are overfused. They're too high. While in the basement, you want to inspect all the walls. You want to look for cracks, and then use your moisture meter. Now, this is a surface meter. It works pretty good on masonry block, and you can see the stains and the moisture stains on the walls that were just painted. Now, we did test it and we found a little bit of moisture, and you want to tell the client, hey, there's stains on the walls, there's efflorescence, and the basement may leak. This is also the location where we had puddling on the exterior that you saw in the prior slides. With these big, large concrete tubs, you always want to look at the legs. Many times the legs are rusted and they're installed over masonry block. Another thing you never want to do is lean on these or even sit on these, because if the legs are rusted, which a lot of times they are, it can collapse. Most of the time these have small cracks. They don't necessarily leak, but they are older and they are very heavy. This is a forensic observation, and if you look closely, sure, you can see all the plumbing and the electrical, but what you also see is new drywall, and drywall also is dated on the back. A lot of times you can see when the drywall was installed, and most of the time when people install drywall in basements on the lower half or lower quarter, it's because the basement flooded. Maybe the tree roots are a problem. Maybe the sewer's blocked in the street. You need to ask the homeowner what is happening here and if this is a frequent condition. You want to take moisture readings of the finished basement walls too. Here you can see the pin meter showing that the walls are dry, but if you look very closely, and if you use a black light, it even comes out better. You can see the mold growing on the surface. This is like a powdery type mildew. This is the stuff that makes your house smell musty. When you walk in the front door, you take that first whiff, and this is what you might smell. So this is telling me that the basement is very humid. They're not running a dehumidifier. There's moisture generators. Maybe the heating system isn't balanced, and so you probably have this mold also growing in the carpets. So this all should be cleaned, and the basement needs to be properly dehumidified. Now, looking in the corner here, you'll actually see deteriorated molding on the base, and this is definitely from water leaking in. This is not from somebody washing the carpets or somebody saying, the dog spilled a water bowl. This is a chronic leak. There's probably waterproofing that needs to be done. There's probably cracks on the outside, and of course this house had poor grading, so this could also be from the poor grading condition. When you're going around the basement and you're testing the walls and there's a pillow in your way, and then you move the pillow and you find out that the pillow is wet, well, that's a pretty good indication that your walls are leaking and the carpet's wet. And you saw earlier how bad the grading was and the water was overflowing, and this house probably will require some type of damp proofing, waterproofing, or some type of water management. And at this point, your client needs to know that they need to get a second opinion, because these types of repairs can be rather expensive. The basement bar sink has an old lead drain, and you can see how they're trying to tape it up. Another problem with this drain is that there's no trap, and you're not sure if there's a trap underneath the concrete either. So things like this and traps like this can permit back siphoning and sewer gas odor. So you may need to install a trap. If you're very observant, you'll notice that the three wise monkeys are not in order. It should be see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. The basement also had a bathroom where you could see the light was installed by a homeowner, and what they're using here is an extension cord. Well, extension cord gauges are like 18 to 20, which are way too thin. That's why they heat up and melt and start fires. So you probably need to replace this light with the proper installation. The basement floor was painted but was cracked. Now, many people are always worried about cracks in floors, but most of the time cracks are not a big deal, especially in concrete floors. These are considered shrinkage cracks. They're not a problem. Now, if you have a radon issue, the radon consultant may have to patch the floor cracks. It appears that the HVAC unit also has a humidifier. Many times humidifiers are overused, and when people overuse humidifiers, they tend to cause condensation on windows, condensation on attic sheathing, and can damage homes. So basically, you want to be very careful with a humidifier and when using one. Additionally, these are never cleaned, and so generally you need to take these apart and clean them because they do get dirty. The water heater obviously has a spillage condition. When you see the rust stains and the stains at the bottom of the water heater at the burner, you have a serious problem. This means the basement is either under negative pressure because the cold air returns are sealed or the HVAC isn't balanced, or you have a problem or restrictions in the flue line. You need to do a draft test on this, and this can be a deadly condition. This is probably the worst thing you could find in a house, is a water heater that's got the rust stains underneath at the burner area. This is indicating incomplete combustion and potential carbon monoxide, and a certified plumber or water heater repairman needs to evaluate. When you open up the electrical panel, you want to look inside, and in this particular panel, you can see where mice are getting in. Not only are they getting in, but you can see the panel white neutral is all blackened, and this means that there may have been a dead mouse that was electrocuted in there and they took it out. But this panel needs plug covers. There are a few knockouts that are missing on the sides, and you want to look for anywhere a mouse can get into an electrical panel, because you don't know what's happening and they could actually cause serious problems. When looking at the upper part of this panel, you could actually see 1, 2, 3, 4 locations where knockouts are missing and mice are getting in. And so these all have to be filled. Earlier, I mentioned that you always want to run the dishwasher before going down to the basement. And here, this is why. You can see where now the water's been dripping. There's some type of leak in the wall. And you can see it's been leaking for a long time because there are stains there. And during our inspection, it was actually starting to drip onto the floor. You always want to use a gas detector to see if there are any gas leaks. And we did find a couple gas leaks. A lot of times you'll find gas leaks at unions, in areas where people bump gas lines, where people hang things on gas lines, and also old shutoffs. Here you can see a gas leak located at an old shutoff. Gas lines should all be repaired, especially when there are leaks. And once the leaks are repaired, you want to do a gas pressure test or have a plumber or gas man check to make sure no other gas lines leak. If you call the gas company to do the same test, a lot of times they will put additional pressure into the lines, and sometimes they even create more leaks than you had before. So be careful when you call a gas company about gas leaks. Just about a minute ago, I assumed that water was leaking from the dishwasher, but you know what? It wasn't. It started raining and we went outside and we analyzed what was actually causing the leak. A lot of times you misdiagnose problems. It does happen a lot. We're human. Sometimes we're lucky and it rains. Sometimes we have to make predictions. And in this particular case, it started raining through the home inspection and the ceiling in the basement started to leak. So we went outside and sure enough, everything that we predicted on our report was actually happening. Here you all can see water overflowing in the gutters, causing water to pond at the base downspout crock area. After we diagnosed the exterior water problems, we want to turn the furnace on. Generally on hot days, I like to do this last. So I do drill my pilot hole because I am going to do a combustion test. And I usually fill these holes in with steel tape or steel plugs. I also will test the water heater for combustion and draft. Knowing that this water heater had spillage, we drilled a hole into it and put a draft gauge on it to see if it had positive draft. From the draft gauge, you want to be between 0.01 and 0.02 water inch columns, and we are below 0.01. And this could also be because the furnace cold air returns weren't sealed and were stuck in the basement. And so the water heater had a hard time competing, and the gases came back down into the water heater and had incomplete combustion. And this concludes the home inspection of this brick bungalow.